The Apache girl feared cowboys would harm her, until one cowboy became her shield. The sun was just beginning to rise over the wide, dusty plains of the southwest, painting the sky with soft oranges and pinks. The wind whispered through the tall grasses, carrying the scent of dry earth and distant wildflowers.
In this harsh but beautiful land lived a young Apache girl named Ayana.
Bert. Her hair was dark as midnight, and her eyes were sharp, always watching, always alert. From the moment she could walk, she had been taught to pay attention to the world around her, because in the desert and plains, danger could come from any direction. Ayana's life was simple but not easy. She lived with her family in a small adobe-style village on the edge of the plains. Her father was strong and skilled in hunting and tracking. Her mother knew how to gather herbs for medicine, cook meals with whatever the land provided, and tell stories of their ancestors. Ayana also had younger siblings who depended on her, and she took this responsibility seriously. Every day before the sun rose high in the sky, she helped her mother collect water from the creek and gather plants for food. Every day she learned more about the land she lived on, how to read the signs in nature, and how to move quietly so nothing could surprise her.
But there was another part of Ayana's world, one that filled her with deep and constant fear.
Dark.
From a young age, she had heard stories from the elders about cowboys. They were outsiders who roamed the plains on horseback, carrying guns and taking what they wanted without asking.
Some stories spoke of cowboys who had stolen food, animals, or even people from Apache villages. Others spoke of villages that had been burned or attacked. Every time she heard these stories, her heart would race, and she would look toward the horizon, imagining dark shapes moving across the land, ready to cause harm. She had learned to be cautious of strangers, especially cowboys. The fear was almost a shadow that followed her everywhere. Despite this fear, Ayana was curious about the world beyond her village. She wanted to explore the plains, to see the mountains in the distance, and to understand the stories she had been told. Yet her curiosity was always tempered by caution. She knew she had to move quietly, watch carefully, and stay hidden if danger came. This awareness was second nature to her. Even in her play, she would hide behind rocks, peek through the tall grasses, and practice moving silently. The elders said this skill would keep her safe, and she took it seriously. One morning, Ayana set out early before the sun had fully risen to gather water from the creek that ran just beyond the village. The water sparkled in the morning light, and she felt a small sense of peace as she dipped her clay jug into the cold, fresh stream. Birds chirped in the trees, and a rabbit darted through the grass, unaware of her presence. For a moment, the world seemed calm and safe. But then, in the distance, she noticed a group of figures on horseback. Her heart froze. The shapes moved in a way she had learned to recognize from the stories: long coats, wide hats, and the glint of metal in the morning sun. Cowboys. Fear gripped her chest like a heavy stone. Her first instinct was to run, to hide, to make herself invisible. She knew the plains offered many places to conceal herself, behind rocks and shallow ravines, among tall grasses, but she also knew that running could attract attention. Carefully, she sank behind a large rock near the edge of the creek and pressed herself against it, holding her breath. She watched as the cowboys rode closer, their horses kicking up clouds of dust.
Her mind raced with the stories she had heard!
What if they were looking for trouble? What if they intended to take her village's animals or harm her family? The fear was almost overwhelming, and she felt a strange mix of panic and fascination. She wanted to scream, to warn her village, but she also knew that if she was seen, she could be in danger herself. Grounded, silent enough that even the rustling wind did not give her away. As the cowboys passed near the creek, she noticed something unusual. One of them seemed different from the rest. While the others rode with purpose, scanning the horizon for targets or potential trouble, this cowboy, his hat slightly tilted and his eyes calm, did not carry himself like the others. He did not shout, He did not wave a weapon, and he did not seem angry or threatening. Instead, he moved with careful attention, watching the land as if he were trying to understand it, not conquer it. Ayana's fear did not disappear, but a small flicker of curiosity sparked inside her. For days after that encounter, she could not stop thinking about the cowboy who seemed different. For each morning when she went about her chores, she scanned the plains, hoping to see him again. The fear of cowboys had been so ingrained in her that she could not completely shake it, but there was something about his presence that made her wonder if all outsiders were not the same. She began to imagine what it would be like if someone could be trusted, if someone could protect her and her family instead of bringing harm. Life in the village continued, with its routines and small joys. Ayana played with her younger siblings, helped her mother cook meals of corn, beans, and roasted meat, and listened to her father teach her about tracking animals. But now her thoughts often wandered to the plains and the cowboy who had not caused harm. Could he be a friend? Could someone from the outside world really be kind and trustworthy? The questions were new and strange, but they stirred something inside her, a mixture of hope and fear.
By the time the sun set and the sky turned deep purple, Ayana would often find a quiet spot to sit and watch the horizon.
She imagined the plains stretching endlessly, the wind whispering secrets, and the possibilities that might exist beyond the stories of fear she had grown up with. She did not yet know what the future held, or that her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. But for the first time, she felt that courage and curiosity might one day outweigh fear, even in a world that had always seemed so dangerous.
After the first encounter with the cowboy on the plains, Ayana could not stop thinking about him.
Every day she felt a mix of fear and curiosity. The stories she had grown up with told her that cowboys were dangerous, that they came to take what they wanted without care for anyone else. And yet, there was something different about this one, something that did not fit the tales of harm and theft. His calm eyes, the way he moved carefully across the land, and the gentle way he seemed to observe rather than conquer, it all lingered in her mind. For days, Ayana would venture closer to the edges of the plains, always careful to stay hidden, watching for signs of the cowboy, pretending disparity. She never approached him directly. The lessons her parents and elders had taught her about caution were too strong. Still, she allowed herself to notice small things, the sound of his horse's hooves over the dry earth, the way he stopped to help a bird caught in a fallen branch, or how he offered water to a thirsty traveler on the road. These were acts that seemed ordinary to anyone else, but to Ayana, they were extraordinary. They suggested a kindness she had never associated with cowboys before. Ayana's heart was conflicted. On one hand, she remembered the warnings. Strangers, especially cowboys, could be dangerous. On the other hand, the moments she observed showed a different side of the world, a side she had not seen before. She began to wonder if all people were the same, or if there could be those who genuinely meant no harm. She wanted to believe it, but old fears die slowly. She kept her distance, watching from behind rocks, from tall grasses, or from the shadows of the trees along the creek. One morning, she noticed him again. He was helping a young calf that had gotten stuck in the mud near a small pond. The animal was frightened, struggling to free itself, and the cowboy gently lifted it with care, guiding it back to firm ground. Ayana could not help but feel admiration mixed with surprise. She had expected harshness, maybe even cruelty, but instead she saw patience and attention. The cowboy seemed aware of the world around him, not just focused on himself. Over the next few weeks, Ayana continued to watch him. She noticed small gestures that revealed his character. He would leave water for travelers who had none, mend broken fences without asking for payment. And sometimes when he thought no one was looking, he would plant small seeds near the edge of the plains, giving life back to the dry land. Each act surprised Ayana and slowly chipped away at the walls of fear she had built around herself. Her curiosity grew stronger each day, and yet she still did not fully trust him. The fear instilled in her since childhood was powerful, like an invisible chain that pulled at her thoughts. She had been taught that cowboys could not be trusted, and those lessons were hard to ignore. But she also knew something inside her that wanted to see the truth for herself, to understand if someone could really be different. Then one day something unexpected happened. Bayana had wandered a little farther than usual, gathering herbs near the edge of the plains, when she saw the cowboy again. This time, he noticed her. His eyes met hers, and for the first time he smiled, not a mocking or distant smile, but one that seemed warm and understanding. Ayana froze, unsure of what to do. Her heart raced, and for a moment she felt the old fear rising like a storm inside her. Should she run? But instead, she found herself curious about what he might do next. To her surprise, the cowboy did not approach her aggressively. He stayed a respectful distance away, slowly lowering his hand from the reins of his horse, and spoke in a calm, gentle voice. "Hello there," he said. "I hope I didn't scare you." His words were simple, but they carried a kindness that felt unfamiliar, yet comforting. Ayana did not respond at first, still unsure if she could trust him. But she listened, quietly, noting the care in his tone, the way his eyes did not carry any threat. For the next few days the encounters continued. The cowboy never forced himself on her attention or tried to make her come closer. Instead, he acted naturally, showing his character through small, everyday deeds. He would rescue a lost animal, leave fresh water near a dry area, or help a traveler carry a heavy load. Each act demonstrated a quiet bravery and compassion that spoke louder than any words could. Ayana began to see him as someone who was different from the cowboys in her stories. She began to imagine what it would be like if someone like him could be trusted, someone who could be an ally rather than a threat. Despite these observations, Ayana still kept her distance. Trust could not be given lightly. Not in her world. She had learned that some people could betray even the kindest gestures, and she was careful not to let hope blind her to reality. Yet each act of kindness she witnessed chipped away at the fear she had carried for so long. Slowly, piece by piece, a sense of possibility grew inside her. Maybe, just maybe, there could be a world where courage and kindness could exist even among those she had feared. One afternoon, a sudden storm rolled across the plains. Dark clouds covered the sky, and the wind whipped through the grasses, carrying dust and debris. Bayana ran to find shelter, but the storm was stronger than she expected. From her hiding spot, she saw the cowboy struggling to guide his horse through the mud and wind. Despite the danger, he carefully helped the animal, steadying it as the storm raged. Ayana felt a strange mix of fear and admiration. Even in harsh conditions, he acted with care and respect, protecting life rather than ignoring it. The storm eventually passed, leaving the plains glistening under the sun's return. Ayana remained hidden but watched intently as the cowboy set to work helping the land recover. He cleared fallen branches, ensured small animals were safe, and tended to the areas that had been damaged. Watching him, Ayana realized that courage was not always about fighting or chasing danger. It was also about acting with responsibility, care, and respect for the world around you. In the evenings, she returned to her village, her mind filled with thoughts of the cowboy. Her parents noticed that she seemed quieter, more thoughtful, and sometimes they saw her gazing toward the horizon, lost in contemplation. Ayana did not speak much of the cowboy, for she was still unsure if it was safe to share her thoughts. But inside she knew that something was changing. Fear was still there, but it was slowly being replaced by a new sense of curiosity and cautious hope. Days turned into weeks, and Ayana began to learn more about herself through these quiet observations. She realized that fear could protect her, but it could also limit her understanding of the world. G began to dream of possibilities she had never considered before, a world where people from different backgrounds could show kindness, a world where courage could be measured not by the strength of your arms, but by the care in your actions. By the end of part 2, Ayanna was beginning a delicate journey. She still did not fully trust the cowboy, but she was learning to see beyond fear, to notice actions that spoke louder than stories. A small flame of hope had been lit inside her, and though the plains remained wide, wild, and full of unknown dangers, she was starting to understand that trust could grow in the most unexpected places.
A few weeks had passed since Ayanna first began observing the cowboy from a distance. The boyish curiosity she had felt at first had grown into something stronger, a quiet interest in who he really was and why he acted so differently from the cowboys of the stories she had heard.
But she had not yet spoken to him, not directly. Her fear remained, though it was beginning to mingle with something new, the possibility of trust. It was late morning when the day's first signs of trouble appeared. The sky, which had been bright and clear, suddenly darkened, and clouds gathered in heavy, rolling masses. The wind began to pick up, rustling the grasses and making the trees sway sharply. Ayanna was near the creek, carefully picking herbs for her mother, when she noticed that the water level was rising faster than usual. She realized that the clouds were not just a storm. They were a flood waiting to happen. Her younger brother Tyann had wandered a little too close to the creek while chasing a rabbit. He had not yet noticed the sudden rise in water, and Ayanna's heart clenched with fear. She called out to him, but the wind carried her voice away. Panic surged through her as she ran closer, trying to reach him. But the creek had already started to swell, and the water moved quickly. Dusk. She knew that if Tyann slipped into the deeper part, he could be swept away. Her lungs felt tight, and her mind raced. She had never been so afraid in her life. Suddenly, she saw the cowboy appear on the edge of the creek. He had been traveling nearby when the storm hit and had noticed the danger immediately. Without hesitation, he leapt from his horse and moved toward the rushing water. His movements were quick but controlled, and he shouted instructions, not in anger, but in calm determination. "Hold on!" he called.
"I've got you!" Ayanna's heart leaped as she saw him reach her brother. With strong, steady hands, he grabbed Tyann and lifted him from the water, carrying him to safety on the opposite bank.
The boy was shivering, frightened but unharmed, and Ayanna felt tears of relief streaming down her cheeks. She ran to hug her brother, her own fear momentarily replaced with immense gratitude. The cowboy, seeing that Tyann was safe, turned to Ayanna. For the first time, she stood close enough to see the full expression on his face: concern, care, and a quiet strength that seemed to radiate from him. She wanted to speak, to thank him, but her voice faltered. Words felt too small for what she felt inside. All she could do was look at him, feeling something shift in her heart. He had come without hesitation, risking himself to protect someone from her family. In that instant, the lessons she had been taught about cowboys seemed incomplete. Some, it seemed, could be different. Over the next few days, Ayanna's thoughts returned again and again to that moment by the creek. She realized that courage was not just about bravery in battle. It was about stepping forward when others were in danger, even if it meant risking oneself. And kindness was not a weakness. It was a powerful force that could protect and heal. She began to see the cowboy not as a threat, but as someone who could be a guardian.
Still, Ayanna knew that trust had to grow slowly. She did not immediately approach him, but she began leaving small signs that she was observing him, quietly noting his habits and actions.
She watched as he repaired a broken fence for a neighbor, helped a lost calf find its mother, and even offered a drink of water to a weary traveler without asking for anything in return. Each act reinforced what she had seen during the flood. The cowboy acted with honesty and care, guided by principles rather than fear or greed.
One afternoon, the cowboy approached the edge of the village.
This time, Ayana did not hide. She remained in the shadows at first, but curiosity overcame caution. She saw him interacting with other villagers, carefully respecting their space, speaking politely and offering help when needed. He was patient with children, gentle with animals, and observant of the land. Ayana realized that the man was not simply kind. He was aware, seeing the needs of others and acting without expecting reward.
That evening, she found herself walking near the creek once again.
The water was calm now, reflecting the orange glow of the setting sun. She saw him standing near the edge, tying his horse to a tree. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other, the silence carrying a new kind of understanding. She finally found the courage to speak, her voice quiet but steady. Breath. "Thank you," she said softly, referring to the rescue of her brother. The cowboy turned to her, surprise and warmth in his eyes. "You're welcome," he replied gently. "He's lucky to have someone who cares so much for him." His words were not boastful. They were simple and honest, and they carried a weight of respect for her feelings. Ayana realized that this was the first real conversation they had, and it left her with a feeling she had not expected. Comfort.
In the following days, a cautious friendship began to form.
Ayana would sometimes walk near the edge of the plains while he worked on his horse or tended to small tasks. They would exchange words, at first minimal, then gradually longer conversations. She learned that his name was Eli, that he had traveled across many regions, and that he had seen hardship but chose to act with integrity and care wherever he went. Eli, in turn, began to notice her intelligence, curiosity, and keen observation of the world. He respected her knowledge of the land, the herbs, and the animals, and he often asked her advice when navigating the plains.
Their bond grew slowly, built on observation, trust, and shared experiences rather than immediate familiarity.
Ayana discovered that it was possible to see the good in someone even when fear told her otherwise. She began to feel a sense of safety in his presence, a feeling she had never associated with cowboys before. And yet she remained aware of the larger world, knowing that not everyone would act as Eli did. Her lessons in caution remained strong, balanced now with the first glimmers of trust and hope. Then came another challenge. A neighboring group of cowboys, unaware of Eli's relationship with the village, rode too close to the homes, curious and threatening. The villagers were frightened, unsure how to respond. Ayana felt her old fear return in full force, a cold weight in her chest. But she also felt a new emotion, a quiet confidence bolstered by her knowledge that Eli was nearby. When the intruders came too close, Eli stepped forward calmly, speaking with authority and careful words. He did not raise a weapon immediately. He used reason and presence to protect the village, keeping the danger at bay.
Ayana watched, astonished and grateful.
The man who had once been a stranger, someone she feared might harm her family, had become a shield in the truest sense. His courage, patience, and care had saved them from potential harm, and she realized that bravery could take many forms, not all of them loud or violent. She understood that protection came from both strength and wisdom, and that someone who acted with thought and respect could be trusted to stand between danger and those they cared about. By the end of this chapter in her life, Ayana had begun to see Eli not as a cowboy to fear, but as a friend and protector. The flood, the storm, and the encounter with outsiders had all become lessons about courage, about kindness, and about the slow, careful growth of trust. Firstly, she knew there would be more challenges ahead, more fear to overcome, but she also knew that with careful observation, patience, and understanding,
It was possible to find allies even in unexpected places. Ayana now looked at the plains differently.
they were still wide, wild, and full of unknown dangers. But she felt a small but growing sense of confidence. She had learned that the world was not just black and white, good or bad. There were shades of understanding, people capable of both harm and kindness, and sometimes One act of bravery could change the way a heart saw the world forever. The days after the storm passed with a quiet tension. The Apache village continued its routines, but the memory of danger lingered in everyone's minds. Ayanna had grown braver, and her trust in Eli had strengthened, yet she knew that the world beyond the village was unpredictable. Stories of cowboys causing trouble were never far from her thoughts, and she understood that the peace they now enjoyed could be fragile.
One morning, as the sun rose over the plains, Ayanna was walking near the edge of the village to collect wild herbs.
The air was dry and warm, and the wind carried the faint scent of sage and wildflowers. From a distance, she noticed a group of cowboys approaching. Their horses kicked up dust, and their voices carried across the open land. Unlike Eli, they seemed hurried, rough, and commanding, scanning the area as if looking for something or someone to take. Ayanna's heart tightened with fear. She could feel the panic rising in her chest, the same fear that had guided her for most of her life. Without a second thought, she ran toward the village, shouting to warn the others. Her younger siblings and friends began to scatter, and villagers hurried to secure their homes and animals. Eli, who had been working near the outskirts, noticed the commotion immediately. He mounted his horse quickly, his calm and steady presence cutting through the fear that had spread. Seeing him, Ayanna felt a small wave of relief wash over her. She knew that he would do whatever he could to protect the village. As the cowboys came closer, Eli positioned himself between them and the villagers. He did not draw his weapon immediately. Instead, he raised his hands in a gesture of caution and respect, speaking in a firm, calm voice. "This is their home," he said. "There is no need for trouble here. Leave them in peace." His words were simple, yet the strength behind them was clear. The cowboys hesitated, not expecting someone to stand in their way with such confidence. Ayanna watched from behind a rock, her heart pounding. She had seen fear and courage before, but never combined so clearly in one person. Eli's presence was like a shield, protecting not just the villagers physically, but also giving them hope and a sense of safety. Slowly, some of the cowboys began to retreat, realizing that Eli's determination would not be easily broken. Others murmured among themselves, unsure of what to do next. Eli remained steady, maintaining his position until the group finally rode away, leaving the village unharmed. After the danger passed, the villagers emerged from their hiding places. Relief and gratitude filled the air. Ayanna ran to Eli, her eyes wide with emotion. "Thank you," she whispered. "You saved us all." Eli smiled, a calm and reassuring expression. "It was nothing," he said, though Ayanna could see the truth in his actions. It was not nothing. He had put himself between danger and those who could not defend themselves, and that act would not be forgotten. In the days that followed, Eli became more than just a protector. He became a part of the community. Damaged during the storm, guided the villagers in building stronger barriers, and taught the children how to be cautious while exploring the plains. Ayanna watched him closely, learning not only from his bravery, but also from his wisdom. She realized that courage was not only about standing up to danger, it was also about planning, preparing, and thinking ahead to prevent harm before it could happen. Ayanna's relationship with Eli deepened. They began to spend more time together, walking along the edges of the plains, discussing the land, the animals, and the skills needed to survive in such a harsh environment. She shared her knowledge of herbs, tracking, and local plants, and he listened attentively, often asking questions and learning from her. For the first time, she felt truly seen and respected, not as a child to be protected, but as a capable young person with valuable knowledge. The village, once wary of outsiders, began to accept Eli as a friend. The elders observed his actions and noticed his consistent respect for the community. They saw that he did not take advantage of their hospitality, did not demand anything in return, and treated everyone with fairness. Slowly, walls of suspicion began to lower, and Ayana felt a sense of pride in being part of a community that could learn to trust wisely. However, life on the plains was never completely safe. A group of cowboys who had observed Eli's actions continued to linger in the distance, suspicious of his presence and wondering why he would protect a village that was not his own. Ayana knew that their curiosity could turn into trouble, and the villagers prepared quietly, reinforcing their homes and ensuring that animals were secure. Fear still existed, but it was tempered by preparation and vigilance, and by the knowledge that Eli would stand with them if danger came.
One afternoon, while checking on a small herd of goats, Ayana noticed Eli signaling toward the horizon.
He had spotted a cowboy approaching alone, and his posture indicated caution. Ayana felt her stomach tighten but did not panic. Instead, she trusted Eli to assess the situation. The lone cowboy came closer, and Eli stepped forward, calmly explaining that the village was peaceful and that harm would not be welcomed. The cowboy listened, surprised by Eli's confidence and respect, and eventually moved on without incident. Through these experiences, Ayana learned an important lesson.
Courage could protect not only through force but also through wisdom, understanding, and calm action.
Eli's ability to face potential danger without rashness inspired her. She began to understand that fear could be a guide, but it could also be overcome by careful thought, bravery, and the presence of someone willing to act for the good of others. The villagers also began to feel more confident. Children played near the edges of the village with less fear, and families worked together to improve their homes. Ayana noticed a shift in the community, a growing sense of strength, resilience, and hope. They had seen that danger could be met with courage, that fear did not have to control every action, and that trust, when given carefully, could lead to protection and understanding. Eli's influence extended beyond physical safety. He encouraged the villagers to observe and respect the land, teaching them how to notice signs of weather changes, how to track animals without disturbing them, and how to maintain harmony with the environment. Ayana absorbed these lessons eagerly, seeing them as a way to strengthen her people against future dangers. She realized that protection came not only from courage but also from knowledge, foresight, and careful planning. Over time, the relationship between Ayana and Eli became one of mutual respect and understanding. She trusted him with her family's safety, and he trusted her judgment and knowledge of the land. Together, they navigated challenges, faced fears, and discovered that strength was multiplied when people worked together rather than alone. By the end of this period, Ayana had learned to see the plains differently. They were no longer just a place of fear and danger. They were a place where courage, wisdom, and trust could create safety and hope. She had seen firsthand how one person's actions could protect many, and she understood that Eli had become not only a protector but also a teacher and a shield for the entire village. As the sun set on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and red, Ayana stood quietly at the edge of the village. She thought of all she had learned about fear, trust, courage, and kindness. She realized that the world could be unpredictable and harsh, but with vigilance, wisdom, and the right companions, it was possible to face challenges without being consumed by fear. Eli had shown her that, and she would carry that lesson with her for the rest of her life. The days following the last encounter with the Cowboys were calm, though Ayana knew that life on the plains was never completely free from uncertainty. The village had survived storms, floods, and threats from outsiders, and much of that survival was thanks to Eli, the cowboy who had become more than a stranger. He had become a guardian, a protector, and a friend. Yet what mattered most to Ayana was the way her own perspective had changed. She had learned lessons about trust, courage, and understanding that she would carry for the rest of her life. It was early morning when she walked to the edge of the plains, her small hands brushing against the tall grasses. The sun was rising, painting the sky with streaks of gold, pink, and orange. She paused, looking toward the horizon where the land seemed endless. The wind carried the scents of sage, wildflowers, and earth warmed by the first light of day. Her thoughts wandered to the past weeks, The storm that had nearly taken her brother, the cowboys who had threatened the village, and the quiet acts of kindness Eli had shown in every moment.
Ayana realized how much she had grown.
Once, fear had dominated her life. She had hidden behind rocks, watched the horizon anxiously, and believed that danger was everywhere. She had thought that all cowboys were to be feared, that trust was dangerous, and that kindness was rare. But now, she understood that not everyone fit the stories she had been told. Some people could act with bravery and care, even when it was not required of them. Some could protect without demanding reward, and some could inspire hope in those around them. Ellie had become all of these things for her and for her village. Eli appeared at the edge of the plains, his horse moving calmly beside him by it.
He noticed Ayana standing alone and rode toward her, his presence steady and reassuring.
But she felt a warmth in her chest, not just from familiarity, but from a deep sense of gratitude. She realized that she trusted him completely now, not blindly, but because he had earned it through his actions, consistency, and care. "Good morning, Ayana," Eli said, his voice gentle yet strong. "Are you ready to check on the fields today?" She nodded, smiling. "Yes. The plants need water and some of the goats wandered near the creek last night. I want to make sure they are safe." Her tone carried pride in her knowledge, her abilities, and the lessons she had learned from Eli.
Together they walked across the plains. Ayana showed him the herbs she had gathered, explaining which could heal minor wounds and which could help ease stomach aches.
Eli listened intently, asking questions and noting her careful observations. He admired her understanding of the land, and she admired his patience and willingness to learn from her. Their bond had grown beyond protection. It had become a partnership based on respect and shared understanding. As they worked, a group of children ran toward them, laughing and playing among the tall grasses.
Ayana smiled, recognizing the change in the village. Where fear had once kept children indoors, now they explored safely, guided by the knowledge that Eli and the adults had prepared the village for possible dangers.
The community had grown stronger, more confident, and more resilient.
Ayana felt pride in knowing that she had been part of that growth, and that her observations, insights, and cautious bravery had helped shape it.
Later, as the sun climbed higher, Ayana and Eli returned to the village. The elders were gathered near the center, discussing plans for maintaining the fences and ensuring water supplies for the animals.
When they saw Eli, they greeted him warmly.
Their trust had grown as they observed him day after day, his actions always consistent, his intentions always clear. He was no longer just an outsider, he was a valued member of their community. Ayana's parents approached her, a mixture of pride and relief in their expressions.
"You have grown so much, Ayana," her father said. "Not just in skill, but in courage and wisdom. You have seen the truth in others and learned how to act wisely."
"That is more important than anything else." Her mother nodded.
"And Eli has shown you that trust can be earned."
"That courage is not just in fighting, but in protecting, helping, and understanding."
Ayana smiled quietly.
She felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that the lessons she had learned were ones she would carry into the future. As the day passed, Ayana reflected on everything that had happened. She remembered the first time she had seen Eli from a distance, the fear she had felt, and the curiosity that had slowly grown into understanding. She remembered the storm, the flood, and the moment he had saved her brother, risking his own safety. She remembered the cowboys who had threatened the village and how he had stood firm, calm, and courageous, protecting everyone with wisdom rather than force alone. Through these experiences, Ayana realized that the world was not simply divided into people to fear and people to trust. Instead, it was a complex place where courage, kindness, and integrity could shine even in the face of danger. She had learned that fear could guide her, but that trust and understanding could create safety, hope, and community. and she had learned that one person, acting with care and wisdom, could change the lives of many.
As the evening approached, Ayana walked once more to the edge of the plains. The sky was painted with deep shades of orange, red, and purple, reflecting on the calm waters of the creek.
Eli was nearby, helping a group of villagers build a small fence to protect young plants from animals. She watched him, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and respect. But he had become her shield, not only physically but also emotionally. He had taught her the value of compassion, courage, and wisdom, and he had shown her that it was possible to bridge gaps between people who once seemed so different. Ayana realized that life on the plains would always have challenges, storms, and dangers. But now, she felt confident that with knowledge, courage, and the right companions, fear could be managed and even overcome. She had learned that true protection came not just from weapons or strength, but from awareness, preparation, and a willingness to act for the good of others. The final days in this chapter of her life were filled with calm and learning. Ayana and Eli continued their walks across the plains, teaching the younger children about the land, showing them how to observe animals, track the weather, and care for each other. The village thrived under this guidance, growing stronger and more united. Ayana understood that these lessons were not just for survival. They were for life, shaping a future where courage, trust, and kindness could flourish, even in a harsh and unpredictable world. In the quiet moments when the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned deep blue, Ayana often sat near the creek, reflecting on all that had happened. She thought about the fear that had once ruled her life and the hope that had slowly replaced it. She thought about Eli and the example he had set through his actions, his bravery, and his respect for the land and its people. And she understood that the world could be challenging and even dangerous, but it could also be beautiful, full of kindness, and open to understanding. In the end, Ayana knew that she had grown not just stronger, but wiser. But courage could guide, but courage could protect. She had learned that trust could be earned, and that true bravery was shown through compassion and understanding. And most importantly, she had learned that even in the harshest and widest plains, hope, safety, and friendship could bloom when one person acted with care and integrity. Standing at the edge of the plains, watching the sunset, Ayana smiled quietly to herself. She felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that she had faced her fears, witnessed courage, and discovered the power of trust. The plains stretched endlessly before her, full of challenges and possibilities, but she was no longer afraid. She knew that with courage, wisdom, and the right companions, she could face whatever came her way. And beside her, Eli continued his quiet work, a steady presence, a shield, and a friend, reminding her that sometimes the world was safer and more beautiful. Then it first appears,